Walters has upped the stakes for Sunday's rubber match between the Nats and Mets. If the Nationals win today, then your first beer at the podcast party is on Walters on October 10th. The Nats Chat podcast party is at 7 p.m. on Friday night, October 10th at Walters, just across the street from the ballpark.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
And the pitch. Swing by Lile and a drive to center field, sending Mullins back. Way back, make it over his head. It is. It's off the wall and bounces back towards center field. Rounding third, Chaparro Hill score. Lile heading for third. They're going to wave him home. Trying for an inside the park home run, and the throw is too high. Lile dives across the plate with an inside the park 2-run homer in the top of the 11th inning. And he has given the Nationals the lead here at Citi Field. Unbelievable. It's now the Nationals 5 and the Mets 3.
I'm gonna tell you, it was one of the most amazing game that I've been with this year. With these guys, you know, they never give up.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who was at Citi Field in New York City. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We on Saturday had maybe the Nationals' wildest win of the season, a 5-3 11-inning win at the New York Mets in Game 2 of a 3-game series. The win snapped the Nats' 5-game losing streak. The win was a devastating loss for the Mets as they fight for their postseason lives. This was a game in which the Nats blew a 3-0 eighth-inning lead, but this was a game in which Mr. September, Daylen Lile, in a Nats 2-run 11th, had a 1-out, 2-run, inside the park home run off the center field wall for a 5-3 Nats lead. Forget hitting triples. Triples are so Friday night. Daylen Lile has moved on to hitting inside the park home runs. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Table to Mat, which you can count on for all of your nutrition and personal training needs. Table to Mat offers virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. You can email Table to Mat directly through the website at tabletomat.com. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com. Or you could call Table to Mat 240-388-2206. The Nats will not have 100 losses in the 2025 regular season. We now can declare that. The Nats are 63-92. Not that them finishing with 100 losses was likely, but good to have that no longer at all a possibility. But what a day Saturday was for the Nats. It began with a scathing piece by the Washington Post on the Lerner ownership group. The day ended with a bonkers win, and as we heard from Mark a few moments ago, if the Nationals win on Sunday, and that keeps the Mets from the postseason, Walters is treating everyone to his or her first beer at the Nats Chat podcast party. We look forward to that.
What a day. Yeah. I'm just going to start with, I have no idea how the Nationals won that game. I truly do not know how they won that game. When Jose A. Ferrer gave up 3 runs, including the tying run, to, turn a 3-0 lead into 3-3, while throwing a career-high 43 pitches to do that over 2 innings. It never crossed my mind from that point on that the Nationals were actually going to win the game. Honestly, I figured either Ferrer was going to give it up there in the 9th after already blowing the lead. If not him, then it was going to be whoever pitched the 10th, and it turned out it was Sauer and Lau. And then if not him, it was going to be whoever pitched the 11th, which turned out to be PJ Poulin. It never seriously crossed my mind the Nationals would somehow be the one celebrating at the end of the game. All the credit to them. They bent, they did not break, and they battled back in a way that I know we've seen at times over the last few years during this rebuild, but this might have been the most impressive version of that because of the stakes, not for the Nats, but because of the stakes for the Mets in front of 43,000 at Citi Field. I'm sure most everyone in this ballpark thought the home team was going to find a way to pull that off and win it. That's a huge win for a young team on a stage that most of these guys have never been on before.
Well, what's funny about this game is as poorly as things went for Jose A. Ferrer, the Nats bullpen, besides Ferrer, was really good. Cade Cavalli was really good. The Nats pitching in this game was really good. The Nats defense in this game, so much better than what we saw in the loss on Friday night. And the Nats offense in this game was not good, with the exception really of like one or two moments in this game. The Nats over 11 innings, 5 runs on just 6 hits, which were an inside the park homer and 5 singles. The Nats did draw 3 walks, but went 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position and struck out 12 times. So you talk about like, how did the Nats win this game? Yeah, it is kind of hard to piece together when you take a step back and examine everything. But I suppose Daylen Lile, he is the headline item in this game with not only what he did, but what he is doing and how he did what he did in this game. Lile as the Nats starting DH and number 4 batter, 2 for 5 with a 2-run inside the park home run. Also had a single and an RBI fielder's choice grounder. But how about that? The guy who has been lacing triples like crazy comes through in a Nats 2-run 11th with a 1-out 2-run inside the park homer off the center field wall. Was aided a bit by a poor relay throw by the Mets, but still, that was an electrifying moment. Cedric Mullins had to run all over the place to try to get that ball, and Lile was blazing around the base pass. And one of the highlights of the game, Lile scores, and he is being greeted by his teammates, and he screams. He lets out this primal scream. You could hear it on TV. He said, yeah. And then he said another word, and then he said the word yeah again. But what a great moment for Daylen Lile, and what a September this guy is authoring.
This is the capper, although there's still 7 games to go, so who knows what else he has in store for us. He's now got 7 triples and 4 homers in the month of September, and you want an all-time stat here. This is from Sarah Langs, who is one of the stat experts in MLB. She looked up 7 triples and 4 homers in any calendar month. Forget about September, just any calendar month over the last 85 years. The only other 3 to do it before Lile, Enos Country Slaughter in 1942, Veda Pinson in 1963, a guy named Willie Mays in 1957, and now Daylen Lile here in September of 2025. It's a little bit of a strange stat, but it encapsulates what Lile has done. It's power and speed combined, hitting the ball hard, hitting it to the gaps, down the lines, using his speed to his advantage. It's been an amazing thing to watch. And I'm telling you, he is thrusting himself into serious consideration for NL Rookie of the Year. The OPS is up to 814. That's ahead of James Wood now, tops on the Nationals, and it's easily the highest for any National League rookie who's taken at least 300 plate appearances. I know it's coming late. I know he's only played 85 games, but in a year where it's already wide open to begin with, he deserves as much consideration as anyone else. I'm not saying that means he should win it or that he will win it, but he deserves as much consideration as anyone else for what he's done, especially in September.
Daylen Lile for this month of September, a batting average of 370, on base percentage of 425, slugging percentage of 753, an OPS of 753 would be nice. His slugging percentage for this month of September is 753. So whereas Reggie Jackson was Mr. October and Derek Jeter was Mr. November and Dave Winfield was Mr. May, we now christen Daylen Lile Mr. September with what he is doing and how he came through in this game on Saturday. What a month that Daylen Lile is putting forth, and what a clutch hit for him in this game on Saturday. You mentioned James Wood. He is the Nats starting left fielder and number 1 batter. Hitless again, 0 for 3. Did draw 2 walks, but he also had another strikeout. And then there is C.J. Abrams. Abrams is the Nats starting shortstop and number 2 batter, 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. And Abrams in the top of the 11th made a horrendous out on the base pass.
Next one away, swinging a ground ball to third. Abrams, the runner, crossing to third. Mauricio tags him out. Abrams runs right into the out.
You know, you talk about this being a bonkers game. The Daylen Lile inside the park homer came moments after Abrams made one of the biggest boneheaded base running outs of this Nats season. And that's saying something because we've had quite a few of those. But Abrams, as the Nats automatic runner at second base, got tagged out in ridiculously trying to advance to third base on a leadoff fielder's choice grounder by Andres Chaparro to Mets third baseman Ronnie Mauricio. I don't know how available the Mets television call of this play is to people, but on SNY, Gary Cohen and Ron Darling, who of course at one time called Nats games, ripped Abrams. I mean, Cohen and Darling shredded Abrams for this play, and I don't blame them. I couldn't get over Abrams trying to do this. I don't know what he was thinking. And then really interestingly, Abrams was removed from the game for the bottom of the 11th. And so you're wondering, did he get hurt on that play? Was he perhaps removed for defensive purposes? We've talked about his defense not being all that good, although Luis Garcia Jr. was put into the game. His defense isn't that good. Or was this maybe Miguel Cairo disciplining Abrams for that terrible out on the base pass in the top of the 11th?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to have the answer for you yet, and we're going to have to ask Miguel Cairo on Sunday morning about that one, because in the chaos of the 11th inning and given what happened right after that, I'm scrambling to rewrite my story and didn't even really notice that closely what was going on. I saw that Garcia had come into the game and was wondering why that was, and then realized that they were moving Nunez to short. And my first thought was, well, that's probably just for defense. I wasn't really thinking about the disciplinary angle on that. So it didn't come up in the post-game questioning. Unfortunately, my bad on that. I'll just say it was an egregious base running mistake. Everybody at every level of baseball knows if you're on second base and there's a ground ball hit in front of you, you stay. And especially in that situation where you're the go-ahead run in extra innings, there's no reason to try to advance there. You know, we have the TOOTBLAN thrown out on the bases like a nincompoop. This is still a TOOTBLAN, but it's a tagged out on the bases like a nincompoop because there was no throw involved in it. I don't know what that was about, and I don't know what the move after the inning was, and we'll find out more. I don't think he was hurt on the play. I didn't see anything in particular like that. Good on Daylen Lile for following that up immediately with his heroics, and it completely took that narrative out of the picture. But that and plenty of other things that went on in this game were the reasons, as I said earlier, that I just never believed the Nats were going to win it, because they did so many things that were not winning baseball plays, to be honest. And we've seen a lot of that from them recently. And that's why I truly just didn't believe in their ability to somehow pull that one off. So all the credit to them for the other guys who did come through to make that happen.
Swing for the fences this summer and hire Table to Mat for all your nutrition and personal training needs. Being healthy and having fun do not have to be mutually exclusive. Table to Mat specializes in making healthy lifestyles enjoyable and sustainable. Are you experiencing headaches, stomach discomfort, or want to lose weight? Find out how your food choices and exercise impact how you feel physically and mentally. We offer virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. With over a decade working in our fields, we bring experience and passion to help you be the best version of yourself. Check us out at tabletomat.com, calling us at 240-388-2206, or emailing us at laura@tabletomat.com for more info. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com.
Now the 2-2 Cavalli coming set. The kick, here it comes. Swing and a high fly ball, right field. Cruz is back, now moving in under it. It's not deep. He makes the catch, and the inning is over. Nice job by Cade Cavalli.
So the Nats starting pitcher in this 5-3 11-inning win at the Mets on Saturday was Cade Cavalli. And you almost forget about this with everything that ended up happening in the game, but Cavalli was really good once again. 5 shutout innings. He gave up 5 hits, which were a double and 4 singles. He had 3 strikeouts versus 1 walk. He threw a lot of strikes, 76 pitches, 52 strikes, just 24 balls. look, the length wasn't there, but that's by design. The Nats are being very careful with Cavalli at this point. You say, okay, the strikeouts weren't there, fine, but he threw a lot of strikes. 5 scoreless innings at an overall good team in the Mets like this. To me, super impressive. And the larger point here is that Cade Cavalli, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 starts, has been so good since the Nats brought him up from AAA Rochester. Even the biggest Nats optimist, even Cade Cavalli's family probably wasn't expecting this, given the season he was having for AAA Rochester. But he has been a pleasure to watch. He has been really effective. And when you talk about 2026, there is optimism with Cade Cavalli. And it has been a long time since there has been true reason for real optimism with Cavalli. And it feels good to be able to say that about him.
Yeah, so to take you behind the curtain here, I said earlier that I was furiously rewriting the story after Lile's inside the park homer, which you would normally do anyways. But up to that point, win or lose, Cade Cavalli was my story of the game. I felt like that was the most important thing that was going to happen on this day from a Nationals perspective. And even after Ferrer blew the lead, even if the Nats had lost in extra innings, I still felt like what Cavalli did over those 5 scoreless innings was the most significant development. And it is still significant. This was the biggest stage he's pitched on so far. Yes, he pitched at Yankee Stadium, but that was earlier in the year. There wasn't as much pressure on the Yankees to win that game the way there is the Mets to win this one. It's a full house. He got himself into a bunch of jams. 4 out of the 5 innings that he pitched, there was not just a runner on base, but a runner in scoring position. And he got his way out of it in each case. He finished it really impressively. He's got 2 on, 2 out in the 5th. He's got to face Pete Alonso. Won a long battle with him and got him to fly out to right field to end that inning and end his start. It's only 76 pitches. He would normally have no problem continuing beyond that. But as you noted, the Nats really are limiting him to 5 innings now down the stretch because of how much he's thrown this year in his first year back from Tommy John surgery. The ERA through 9 games, it's 4.23. That's respectable. Throw out the game at Yankee Stadium, and I know you can't do that, but that was his one legitimately bad start. 7 runs allowed and didn't make it out of the 3rd inning. Throw that one out, the ERA is 2.98. And that's even with him being held to 5 innings, where some of these games, if he can go 6 or 7 and doesn't give up any more runs, that's going to lower the number as well. It's been a hugely encouraging development for Cavalli and for the Nationals, and I agree with you that even the most optimistic view of this was, well, hopefully he comes up here and he, number 1, proves he's healthy, and number 2, proves that he can be somewhat effective as a big league pitcher. He's gone beyond that. He's absolutely healthy, knock on wood, and he's been hugely effective with only a couple of outliers along the way. That sets up so well for him and for the team heading into next year. I know there's a lot to sort through for them still to figure out from a pitching standpoint, but Cade Cavalli and Mackenzie Gore at the top of your rotation is a pretty good place to start. And it's what we've all been hoping for several years now. To finally see it in action has been so refreshing and so encouraging for the future.
Yeah, and he since that bad outing at the Yankees, that was an 11-2 loss at the Yankees on August 27th, 8 runs, 7 earned, 2 in the 3rd innings. He since then has put together 4 consecutive decent, if not good starts. So that was basically an outlier. Like you said, it's really his only truly bad start. If you want to pick some nits, maybe one other start, but otherwise, he's been really good, and I give the guy a ton of credit. The Nats bullpen in this 5-3 11-inning win at the Mets on Saturday. So as we said, Jose A. Ferrer had problems, but the other 4 Nats relievers in this game came through, and that should not be overlooked. So ultimately, 5 Nats relievers combined to allow 3 runs in 6 innings. Connor Pilkington tossed a perfect bottom of the 6th. Clayton Beeter tossed a scoreless bottom of the 7th, despite giving up a leadoff single. Then we had the appearance of Jose A. Ferrer. We have not been seeing much of Jose A. Ferrer lately, with the Nats not doing so well, as mentioned. Came into this game with a 5-game losing streak. Ferrer allowed 3 runs in 2 innings. Bottom of the 8th, he allowed 2 runs. He issued a 1-out hit by pitch of Pete Alonso, despite having had him down in the count at 1.12. Ferrer gave up a 2-out double by Starling Marte off the left field wall. Ferrer then gave up a 2-out 2-run double by pinch hitter Mark Vientos down the left field line on a 1-2 pitch to cut the Nats lead to 3-2. Ferrer in that Mets 2-run 8th did generate 2 swinging strikeouts. And then Ferrer in the bottom of the 9th allowed a run. He gave up a leadoff first pitch single by pinch hitter Luis Torrens to left field. Issued a 1-out hit by pitch of Francisco Lindor on an 0-2 pitch. That was a killer. gave up a one-out RBI single by Juan Soto on a bloop to center field on an 0-2 pitch to tie the game at 3. Allowed a double steal by Lindor, and Soto issued a one-out intentional walk of Pete Alonso. But, and this is where Ferrer turned what had been really a wretched appearance into at least an appearance that you can look back upon and identify some positives with. He generated back-to-back swinging strikeouts of Brandon Nimmo and Starling Marte with the bases loaded to end the inning and keep the game tied at 3. Sauron Lau, scoreless bottom of the 10th. PJ Poulin, perfect bottom of the 11th. So props to Pilkington, Beater, Lau, and Poulin for the work that they did. But the most interesting thing here, I think, is Ferrer. And there are a few things. Number one, Miguel Cairo putting him out there for these 2 innings, even with Ferrer not at his best. It seemed like these 2 innings belonged to Ferrer no matter what. The other thing is, Ferrer had so many guys down in counts and was not putting them away. He did have some strikeouts in this appearance. He could have had more, you could argue, just because so much of the damage came off guys having been down 0-2 or 1-2, and that was especially disappointing about his work in this game.
It just felt like he was perpetually one pitch away from getting out of all this without all that happening, and he couldn't get that pitch until he absolutely had to do it, because if he didn't, he would have lost the game in the 9th. So, look, we understood the situation. You're holding Cavalli to 5 innings, so you're now going to have to ask a lot out of your bullpen. You get through the 6th and the 7th, and I completely understand, and we could see it coming, that Ferrer was going to pitch the 8th because it's Soto, Alonso, and Nimmo to lead off that inning. We know how Miguel Cairo has managed this. It makes perfect sense to use him in that spot. But what you also then realize is they don't have a fallback now to pitch the 9th. He's coming into the 8th, and barring some super long inning where the pitch count got out of control, he's going to have to come back for the 9th. Cole Henry's on the IL. Clayton Beater had already pitched the previous inning. Who else are you going to use, in theory, to pitch the 9th now at this point? And so you knew it was going to have to be Ferrer. So it takes him 22 pitches to get through the 8th. He gives up 2 runs. It's now a 3-2 game. But you understand he's going to be coming back out there. And oh, by the way, the Mets are turning the lineup over again, and he's got to face those big boys yet again. I don't know if I can ever remember a case where a closer faced 13 batters in one outing across 2 innings. That is a ton of batters to face. The Soto at bat, he's got him down 0-2, and he got a jam shot, 100 miles an hour in on the wrists. A friend of mine reminded me it was just like the Ryan Zimmerman hit off Josh Hader in the wild card game. Just muscled it into shallow center field. It was not, a good contact at all. It was a good pitch, but just muscled it into center field for the hit to keep the rally going. In that case, tied the game with this one. So frustrating stuff to be sure. But I'll tell you what, I do give him all the credit in the world. It looked like the game is over. I'm fully expecting him to give up one more hit or wild pitch or whatever it is, and they're going to lose the game right there in the 9th. And instead, he strikes out Nimmo on 100 miles an hour, and he strikes out Marte on 100 miles an hour on his 43rd pitch, career high number of pitches thrown, and he still threw 100 with the winning run in scoring position. I know it was ugly. I know the path there, that's not what you want, but he did actually show me something in the way he got it together at the last possible minute to at least extend the game and not lose it right there.
Well, it's kind of ironic because him not striking out guys was painful, and yet he ended the appearance with 2 huge strikeouts and actually ended up with 4 strikeouts over 2 innings, which is good. So even in an appearance in which the strikeout was lacking, the strikeout ended up not being lacking. And so you give him credit for that. And like we said, Pilkington, Beater, Lau, Poulin come through. And the Nats come through with a remarkable win, 5-3 in 11 innings at the Mets. The Nats in this game got out-hit 11-6. They nearly got doubled up, the Nats did, in terms of hits, and yet won this game. Just remarkable.
Hey Nats Chat, here to tell you about Babbel. Not sure if you're aware, but this upcoming spring is going to be a busy one across the sport, as in addition to Cactus and Grapefruit League play, there will be the World Baseball Classic from March 5th to the 17th. Now, a few years ago, my wife and I, we flew down to South Florida. One day we saw the Nats play in West Palm, and the next day we went and saw Nicaragua play down in Miami. It was a heck of a lot of fun, and one of the things that worked well was that her and I like to practice Spanish, so it made it more of an authentic experience sitting in the stands. If you too want such an experience, then I recommend checking out Babbel. In addition to Spanish, they also offer Brazilian Portuguese if you want to root for Brazil in the WBC, or if you are really into the Netherlands squad, Babbel offers Dutch. Babbel is a great way to engage with native speakers who can help you nail those pronunciations as you work on the language. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning languages are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/natschat. That's spelled BABBEL.com/natschat.
Now the pitch. And it's in there. Strike three called. Knee-high outside corner. And Soto upset. A Curly W's in the books. First major league save for left-hander P.J. Poulin, who comes in and gets 3 outs in a row, including retiring Lindor and Soto to end the ball game. A Curly W's in the books. In 11 innings, the final score, the Washington Nationals 5, the New York Mets 3.
All right, well, this game happened hours after the Washington Post on Saturday morning came out with quite the piece. The piece was by columnist Barry Svrluga, Nats insider Andrew Golden, and MLB insider Chelsea Janes. The headline of the piece, quote, "Who is running the Washington Nationals?" end quote. And the piece painted a rather unflattering picture of the Lerner ownership group. The piece was based on conversations with, quote, more than a dozen current or former employees of the Nationals and others around MLB familiar with how the Lerners run their team, end quote. And the piece very much conveyed a lack of leadership with the Nats, due in large part to there being so many people who make up the Lerner ownership group. A bunch of anonymous quotes in the piece said one source of the team, quote, "It's so inefficient. When there are that many people in the room, it's hard to come to decisions in an orderly fashion," end quote. Said a former employee of the Nats, quote, "How does anything get decided? Who has input into it? Who is influential and who's not? I couldn't tell you the first thing because I'm not in those meetings," end quote. A former Nats executive described this organizational structure as, quote, "chaotic," end quote. Two sources referred to the team as, quote, "directionless," end quote. A former Nats employee said that, quote, "More than once I had an owner tell me to do something and then had another say not to spend time on it," end quote. So a lot of anonymous quotes, that is true. A good bit of this is based on people who used to work for the Nats. So you can't say, well, are these disgruntled employees with axes to grind? At the same time, I think you're being naive and awfully charitable if you think all of this is false and none of this is true and none of this is close to the reality right now. You know, there is a fear that a lot of Nats fans have, and that is that it doesn't matter who gets hired as the head of baseball operations, because as long as the Lerner family owns this team is destined to not again have sustained success. That's a harsh thing to say, but a piece like this does make you wonder if that in fact is the case. This was not a flattering portrait of the Lerner ownership group that was painted by the Post.
And I think it underscores what's coming up here. And they have a huge decision to make, potentially within the next week or so, when they name a new head of baseball operations, whether it's a president of baseball operations and a GM, just a GM, however they want to term it, whether it's Mike DiBartolo, whether it's somebody from the outside, whether it's a combination with multiple people. It starts with that decision, but then the actions over the rest of the winter by the new person in charge are going to tell us a lot about how much, to use Mike D's term for it, real change is going to be implemented and how much is not going to be available to whoever is in charge of this. What has happened over this course of this season should be an eye-opener to the Lerner family. Will it be? Will it convince them for quote unquote real change in the way that they operate moving forward? I don't know the answer to that. I think a lot of people have their doubts based on what they've seen and what they think, especially the next couple of years with the MLB labor situation, the CBA expiring, the possibility of a lockout to come after the 2026 season, that maybe they're just biding their time here, getting by until, in theory, there is a salary cap, in which case their whole operating mechanism could be entirely different of how they proceed at that point. There's a lot at stake here and a lot that we just don't know how it's all going to play out. But what I'll tell you is that in the article, which had some excellent reporting by all three of them, friends of mine, even though they are in theory competitors working for another outlet, it pretty much reinforced what I've seen and heard and suspected myself watching this over the last few years. That since Ted Lerner's passing, that Mark Lerner, yes, is in charge, but the rest of the family is involved in all the decisions. And it's not like any one person really has the say on things and is taking charge and to say, here's how we're going to do it. It's been more group effort than anything. And it has at times felt stagnant, maybe in part because of that. And you've seen the results on the field this year and what they finally decided to do about that. Did that, as I said, does that serve as their moment to realize, okay, it's time for us to do things differently? Or deep down, do they feel like they're doing the best they can, and now it's up to whoever takes over baseball operations to do a better job of enacting what their own vision for the team is?
The phrase "too many chefs in the kitchen" comes to mind. And, I was thinking about this in the history of Washington, D.C. sports. When you talk about the big four pro sports teams, the Nationals, the Commanders, the Wizards, the Capitals, I don't know that we've ever had this where ownership is being done in a committee fashion. Like, obviously, we've had ownership groups, but there has always been a clear number one person in the ownership group. Like, if you look at the Redskins, George Preston Marshall, Edward Bennett Williams, Jack Kent Cooke, Dan Snyder, now Josh Harris, it has always been clear who the number one owner has been. The Bullets/Wizards and the Capitals, Abe Pollin, Ted Leonsis, always clear who the number one person has been. The Nats, when Ted Lerner was alive, you did know that Ted, the patriarch, was the number one person. Since his passing, yes, Mark Lerner has the title of managing principal owner, but to be like super technical here, there are 6 principal owners beyond Mark Lerner. So he's like the head principal owner, but there are 6 other principal owners in this group. Annette M. Lerner, Marla Lerner Tannenbaum, Deborah Lerner Cohen, Robert K. Tannenbaum, Edward L. Cohen, Judy Lenkin Lerner. So you're talking about 7 different people, perhaps 7 different visions for how the team should be run. You perhaps are talking about competing interests. You perhaps are talking about competing philosophies, competing motivations. It's not a given that they are all on the same page. And it just strikes me as when you don't have that one alpha presence, male or female, I think that's a problem. I think ideally what you have is one person who is clearly in charge, and that better be a competent person for sure. But if you have that one person, I think that makes for a much clearer direction than if you have, this 7-headed monster trying to run things. Man, it is hard to have organizational alignment when you have 7 different people at the top of the food chain.
So when you've heard me over the last few years discuss, that possibility of them selling the team and why it didn't happen and why there was some difference of opinion perhaps in, among the group of whether they were going to or not, this is what we're talking about here. Clearly some are more into it than others. Now, the one thing I'll say, and the article alluded to this somewhat, but I know this, to be true myself from what I've experienced. They aren't all involved to the same extent. The 7 of them principal owners, they're not all participating at the same level in this process. It is clear to me Mark Lerner is the most involved, and certainly when it comes to day-to-day baseball operations, he is most involved in that. Ed Cohen, his brother-in-law, is the other member of the family who is most involved from a financial standpoint, from a business standpoint, and certainly on all the big decisions they make. He has always been, and even more so recently, at least publicly, seeing him around more. I have noticed that more. He has been a major part of it, probably number 2 behind Mark Lerner. And then number 3, to be honest, is probably Alan Gottlieb, who is not officially one of those principal owners. He is the chief operating officer of Lerner Sports. He has been close with the family and working with them for decades now, even before, they bought the Nationals. He has a lot of say on the day-to-day operations and financial decisions that are made. The rest of them, That's not to say that they don't have opinions and that they don't ultimately have to be involved to take votes on things and make the call on things. But I don't think that Judy Lerner, Mark's wife, that Annette Lerner, Ted's widow, and some of the others are really making hard decisions on whether Davey Martinez should be the manager or not, or whether they should spend $5 million on Joey Gallo or not. I think that's a smaller group of people. What I also think is interesting in it all is I believe that Mark Lerner truly is interested in running a successful franchise that is both successful financially and successful on the field. I think that matters to him, winning games on the field. I think the others, in particular here I'm talking about Ed Cohen and Alan Gottlieb, who have more of a say in matters, I think they're more focused on being successful from a financial standpoint and maybe are less motivated than Mark is to have the winning team. Mark has always been the one who's been most interested in the true baseball of it all. And it served him well in a lot of ways. But since the passing of his father, it kind of puts him in a position where he might care more about that kind of stuff than anybody else in the group. And so it does lead to all these decisions and maybe disagreements in some ways about how they want to proceed with all of this. I don't know where it goes from here, except to say, I've made this point before, even if ultimately their goals individually are to be a successful sports franchise from a financial standpoint, right now, what's the best way to make that happen? Even if it's just a matter of trying to sell the team and you're trying to raise the value of the team so you can sell it, what's the best way to do that? Put a better product out there. I don't know what else there is to do beyond a TV deal and some sponsorships and other things like that. Put a better team out there. And I think that's what most everyone really would like to see for them to take that step, because I don't know how else they achieve that goal that they're looking for in the end without winning more games and encouraging more fans and more people to watch and more people to buy concessions and everything else that goes along with a successful franchise.
It was not a surprising piece to read on Saturday. It was, though, a very discouraging piece to read. And you wonder what the candidates for head of Nats baseball operations are thinking in reading this piece. If you are a Josh Burns or an Emil Sadeh or a Matt Foreman and you're a candidate for this job and you're considering leaving what you're currently doing to come run this team's baseball ops, and you read this about who you would be working for, what are you thinking? Like, what's going through your mind? The other thing is, this has been a staple for years. The Washington Post does this, the late season / end of season expose on what has gone wrong for the team that has just had a bad season. There were a million of these with the Redskins back in the day. We've had some of these with the Nats. I remember in 2015, a massive piece on everything that had gone wrong with the 2015 Nats. And now we get something here with ownership as the Nats 2025 season ends. But, you mentioned the sale of the Nats. We did not talk about this, but this is significant, I thought. Wizards and Capitals owner Ted Leonsis, he partook in this event a few days back, the CNBC Sport and Boardroom Game Plan event in Los Angeles this past Tuesday, September 16th. Said Ted, of having tried to buy the Nats, quote, "It takes two to tango, but the Lerners aren't ready to sell," end quote. And I think that's something to keep in mind. I mean, Ted's been pretty aggressive and been very open about wanting to buy this team. He says they're not interested in selling right now, which I think is very disappointing for a lot of people. Again, is it the case that until this team is sold, sustained success will elude this team because of the way ownership runs the team? You hope that that's not the case. But you have to wonder of reading what the Post put out there on Saturday morning. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. This installment of Nats Chat is brought to us by Table to Mat, which you can count on for all of your nutrition and personal training needs. Table to Mat offers virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. You can email Table to Mat directly through the website tabletomat.com. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com. You can call Table to Mat 240-388-2206. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Sunday morning 9 to 10 on on Priority Sports Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast.
Here's the pitch. Swinging a line drive to right. Going to be a base hit for Riley Adams. Cruz around second. Heads for third of the ball. Misplayed by Soto. Rolls all the way to the outfield fence. So Cruz keeps on running. He will score. And Riley Adams all the way to third base. That'll be a single. And so we've seen it again for the second night in a row. With a base hit, runner scores all the way from first. Adams ends up at third base.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.